Language learning has completely transformed in the digital age, but here's something wild. Studies show that the first hour of learning a new language is actually the most critical for long term success.
That's fascinating. And it really explains why getting those basic building blocks right is so crucial. I was just looking at this innovative approach to teaching English that completely rethinks those crucial first steps.
You know what's really interesting about that? The way they break everything down into these tiny, manageable pieces. It's like they're rewiring how our brains process new information.
Well, from what I understand, they start with something deceptively simple greetings. But there's actually some pretty sophisticated psychology behind teaching those first.
That's right. And here's what's fascinating about their approach. Instead of overwhelming learners with complex grammar rules, they begin with these universal human interactions. Think about it. Every culture has some way of saying hello.
The sequencing really caught my attention. They move from greetings to numbers, which seems so natural when you think about it.
Oh my goodness, yes! And what's really clever is how they integrate numbers with real world objects. Like they don't just teach 1, 2, 3 in isolation, they connect it to counting actual things, like apples or books.
That reminds me of some research I read about memory formation. Apparently, we're 60% more likely to remember vocabulary when it's connected to physical objects we can visualize.
Those statistics really drive home why their method works so well. And you know what else they do brilliantly? They build these natural conversation patterns by teaching days of the week alongside daily activities.
The way they weave everything together is pretty remarkable. How do they handle teaching food vocabulary? That's usually such a challenge.
Well, here's what makes their approach so effective. They don't just list food items, they immediately show how to express preferences. So learners aren't just memorizing apple and banana, they're learning how to say, I like apples, or I don't like bananas.
That's exactly the kind of practical application that makes language stick in your memory.
And speaking of memory, let me tell you about their brilliant review system. They use this spiral learning technique where concepts keep coming back in new contexts. It's like building a web of understanding rather than just stacking facts.
So, how do they maintain engagement throughout the learning process? That's always been one of the biggest challenges in language education.
Well, they've developed this fascinating method of mixing quick wins with progressive challenges. For instance, they'll teach a simple greeting, then immediately show how to use it in a real conversation. It creates this immediate sense of accomplishment.
That immediate feedback loop must be incredibly motivating for learners.
Exactly! And here's something really interesting about their approach to daily activities. They teach them in a way that mirrors natural language acquisition in children. You start with, I wake up, then build to, I wake up at 7, and finally to, I wake up at 7 and brush my teeth.
The scaffolding of complexity seems so natural when you put it that way.
And what's really fascinating is how they incorporate cultural elements without overwhelming learners. Like, they'll teach different greetings for different times of day, which subtly introduces cultural awareness alongside language skills.
That's such an important point about cultural context. Language learning isn't just about words and grammar, is it?
Not at all. And here's what research has shown. Learners who understand cultural context are 40% more likely to achieve fluency. It's about understanding not just what to say, but when and how to say it.
The implications for traditional language education are pretty significant when you think about it.
Oh my goodness, yes! And let me tell you about their approach to error correction. It's revolutionary. Instead of immediately pointing out mistakes, they model correct usage naturally in response. It's like how parents interact with their children learning to speak.
That must really help reduce the anxiety that often comes with language learning.
Absolutely right. And here's some surprising data. Studies show that learners in low anxiety environments acquire language up to 30% faster than those in traditional classroom settings.
The psychological aspect of language learning seems crucial to their whole approach.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how they build confidence through these micro achievements. Each lesson ends with a practical demonstration of new skills, showing learners exactly what they can now do with the language.
That kind of tangible progress must be incredibly motivating.
Well, here's what makes it so effective. They've found that celebrating small wins triggers dopamine release, which actually enhances memory formation. It's like they're hacking the brain's reward system for better learning.
The neuroscience behind their method is fascinating. How do they handle the transition from basic to more complex concepts?
That's where their genius really shows. They use what they call bridge concepts. For example, they'll take something simple like, I like coffee, and gradually expand it to, I like drinking hot coffee in the morning. It's this seamless progression that keeps learners engaged without overwhelming them.
The whole approach seems to be built on such a deep understanding of how we naturally acquire language.
Exactly. And here's what's really exciting. They're seeing remarkable results. Learners using this method are achieving basic conversational fluency in about half the time of traditional methods.
Those results are pretty compelling. What do you think this means for the future of language education?
Well, I think we're seeing a fundamental shift in how we approach language learning. The focus is moving away from academic perfection toward practical communication skills. And the data supports this. Learners who start with communicative competence actually develop better grammar naturally over time.
That really turns traditional language education on its head, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And here's what I find most exciting. This approach is making language learning accessible to people who might have been intimidated by traditional methods. The emphasis on natural acquisition, rather than rote memorization, is really democratizing the whole process.
The implications for global communication are pretty significant when you think about it.
Oh, they're huge! And you know what's really interesting? They're seeing that this method works equally well across different age groups and learning styles. It's like they've tapped into something universal about how our brains process language.
That's fascinating. Do you think this could change how we think about learning in general?
Well, here's what's really exciting about that possibility. The principles they're using could potentially revolutionize how we teach everything from mathematics to music. It's all about understanding how our brains naturally process and retain information.
The broader implications for education are pretty mind blowing.
They really are. And as we wrap up today's discussion, I think the key takeaway is that effective learning isn't about forcing information into our brains. It's about creating the right conditions for natural acquisition and understanding.
That's such a powerful way to think about it.
Well, thank you all for joining us today on this fascinating journey through the future of language learning. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, every conversation is an opportunity to practice.